It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
So in review, number one of the rule of three was keep it simple. Number two was keep an eye on taxes and fees. And then the final thing in the rule of three is know yourself.
I love it.
I tried to say it with a low, because I had this groggly voice from the, recovering from the flu.
Did you think he was going to start coughing too? Yeah, I thought he was.
Did you think I was about to start coughing?
I thought you were going to.
Really?
Yeah, I thought as soon as you went low.
I got this thing under. It's getting stronger. That's what you come in with a sick voice. This thing, it was like game time. Let's wake up, boys. It's time to wake up. So this thing, it's gotten know yourself.
Know yourself. To thine own self be true.
So here's the thing. Know yourself. We talk about behavior, investment behavior, just us humans, we are horrible, miserable creatures.
It's true.
No doubt. There's studies out there. We talk about the Dalbar study, which is the easy way. I say the QAIB, which is the quantitative analysis of investor behavior. They come out every year and show us how horrible we all are.
The average investor.
Versus comparing just buying like the S&P 500. They compare you to an index like the large cap index, or they compare you to
they'll even do like
60,
target date
40.
funds now. Yeah,
I mean, so and they show you how the typical investor doesn't hold their investments as long as they should. Yeah. They're very emotional, and all of this is ridiculous. And if you can figure out as early as possible that you are this emotional creature and that you're going to have to be a contrarian. There's a reason Warren Buffett, he says, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful.
Yep.
That is because he wants you to be a contrarian. And that all ties into this behavioral understanding of not making stupid financial decisions.
And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics in there. But what I think is so interesting about these three things we want to drive home with you is that, with the first one, if you don't keep it simple, you can just be inefficient, right? You can kind of muddy the waters. And if you don't understand taxes and fees, you can have some drag on your portfolio. You may not grow as well as it could over time. But those two are kind of like, those are thorns, right?
Yeah.
If you screw up the knowing yourself part and understanding what kind of investor you are, now you're talking about making decisions that could possibly derail your plan, that could change your retirement. That's not the thorn. That's falling headlong into the briar bush.
It's the difference between having a butter knife and trying to cut an apple with it and cutting yourself versus trying to trim a bush with a chainsaw and hitting the leg. I mean, it is that big of a difference. Yep. Of the same tools, but really could take you in a different direction on things. So let's kind of go through some of these areas that you need to know yourself.
Yeah, I think one of the first ones that we often talk about, and this is, again, if you ever become a client of the firm, the very first meeting we have as clients, we don't talk about investments or taxes or anything. We talk about risk.
Yep.
And specifically the relationship of risk capacity to risk tolerance.
And those things, look, risk tolerance is how much of a cowboy you are. I mean, it's truth. That's why I always get nervous about asking. I could ask a 75-year-old entrepreneur who discovered something or the worst are real estate developers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you get a real estate developer and you ask them, so, hey, you're 75 years old. Market goes down. What are you going to do? They're like, giddy up. That's not the right answer. Because you don't have the risk capacity, the time for the for your portfolio to recover to what's going on in the financial world. So risk tolerance is how much of a cowboy you are. It doesn't necessarily tell how much risk you should truly have.
That's right.
Because that's where risk capacity comes in. Because you might be at that stage of life where you need to marry the cowboy and the person that's going to be in the background whispering, hey, I know we could, but maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah.
So that's why those two do go hand in hand. You got to have risk tolerance understanding and risk capacity on knowing yourself.
Another one, I think, as early investors, we all struggle with this overconfidence bias. And I think a harsh truth that we need to share with most of you out there listening is you're not Warren Buffett.
Oh, no. And Warren even admits you're not going to be Warren Buffett anymore because, he in his most recent shareholder letter, he had shared that, they have kind of transitioned over the years. That's why he was changing the way they're doing accounting. The other thing is that they are now the holder of multiple private businesses they've accumulated over the years. You're not going to be able to do that.
Yep.
I mean, it's not like, because think about what Warren's benefit is. If you've ever followed Berkshire Hathaway, he publishes in all of his shareholder letters, it says, this is the key things we're looking for a business. If you meet all these criteria, feel free to reach out to me. So you know,
it's like shooting
all
fish in the barrel.
The private wealthy people who have accomplished all their financial goals. They're super successful for their family, but they're getting a little grayer or longer in the tooth, and they go, you know what would be a great trophy for the trophy case? What if I sold my business to Berkshire Hathaway? Yeah. I'm not going to tell Warren, give me a few more years. I know you're going to live to be 136. I don't think I am. So in a few years, I might be interested in Abound becoming part of Berkshire Hathaway. So look me up. I mean, this is the way it works. So you're not going to be Warren Buffett. So that's what I'm saying. Know yourself, know what your limitations are. So and you're going to know there's other opportunities.
Yeah. So if you're not Warren, how should you look about investing? What's one of the things you should think about?
I think diversification is your friend. Yep. You got to be able to split your money up between, we've already said it, like cash, stocks, bonds, understand how you can use mutual funds, index funds to kind of spread your risk out, and then use the way you invest to set you up for success on what you want, because money is just a tool, and then have a purpose for it. Have a plan of action for everything that you're doing. And then, Bo, I think you set this up best, so I'm going to let you kind of close it out with this, is don't be afraid to ask for help. So what are the 3 key things and times we see people probably need to step up and get somebody in their corner?
Yeah, one of the questions that we get asked so often is, hey, how do I know when I should hire a financial advisor? When does it make sense to even start having that conversation? And we think there are really 3 key points or 3 key moments where you should think about it. The first is when the gravity of your financial decisions becomes so big that it's difficult for you to bear alone. If you make a 10% blunder on $10,000, you set yourself back $1,000. It's probably not changing your life. If you make a 10% blunder on $250,000, now that's a $25,000 setback. That may be more than you're saving in a year. That may be a substantial piece of your income. It just becomes big. So if the decisions that you're making have larger and larger impact, it may make sense to hire an advisor.
Well, I want to step in and say this one thing, because we've had this happen more and more often recently. We've had people who have estates of $4 million, $5 million, $10 million. That number, by the way, when you do 10% on those, we're not talking about, we're talking about cars, then we're talking about houses, then we're talking about legacies.
That's right.
So this doesn't get smaller. This becomes a bigger issue over time.
That's exactly right. And then the second thing is, what generally tends to happen is, as our assets grow, as our life moves along, as we age, our situation becomes a little more complicated. Where it used to be really easy and we could go into TurboTax and do our tax return in 13 seconds, now we have to go to all these different institutions and pull all these different forms and fill out all these different schedules. Things just get more complicated, and we have to make sure that we are getting the estate documents right and doing the tax piece right and making sure we have the appropriate insurance. Well, if your life has gotten complicated to where you don't know that you're an expert in all the areas you should be an expert, it may make sense to think about having someone step in and help you there. And then the third time is when life just gets busy.
Yeah.
We get pulled in all these different directions, whether it be financial involvement or community involvement or family involvement or social involvement. It's really easy in those times for our financial lives to get pushed on the back burner because they can. If you find that you're someone who's not prioritizing the things that you should be prioritizing, it might be time to reach out and ask for some help. You may be in any one of those 3 areas, any combination of the 3, or maybe all 3 of those describe exactly where you're at. If that's the case, it may make sense to seek some professional guidance.
You know what I loved about that? You said the 3 reasons you might want to look and talk about a financial advisor. We are doing a show on the rule of 3. And it really is amazing how the human brain, I think, just accepts and digests things so much easier. So that's why you transitioning into the rule of 3 with those 3 key points is so important. And just to close it out, Bo, give them a reminder of what the rule of 3 and what our 3 key points was again.
Yeah, so we think if you really just want to think about what are 3 things I should know, or what are 3 3 ideas I should keep in the back of my head to set myself up to be successful financially, we think step number 1 is you just want to keep it simple.
Oh, man.
Keep everything as simple as possible and no simpler. It was probably Benjamin Franklin who said that. No, I'm just kidding. It was Einstein that said that one. Number 2, keep an eye on taxes and fees. Said a little bit differently, control what you can control. Yep. Keep an eye on that stuff. And number 3 is know yourself. Understand who you are, how you should be looking at money, and when you know where your limitations are and how to navigate them.
And that's the biggest one, because that's the one that is going to derail you. As we always see, when you get into the cycle of emotional reactions to markets and so forth, it's always that human element that freaks you out. That's the reason that the news media is trying to scare you. And that's why we try to give you a resource kind of go above and beyond common sense, we'll say, so that you can make the right rational decisions for your personal finances. Now, we didn't do a great job of setting it up. You guys, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is the Money Guy Show. You can go to moneyguy.com.
If this is your first time, how'd you stumble here on April Fool's Day?
So moneyguy.com, reach out to us. We do this live stream every other Tuesday. Now, we're doing this on a random Monday on April 1st, which if we were smart enough, we'd have marketed it as an April Fool's thing.
Dummies.
But, make sure you're going to YouTube and you're subscribing. Make sure you're going to moneyguy.com. Give us your email address and your zip code. We're asking for the zip code because I think in the future, we want to know where all the Money Guy family lives so we can kind of attack those certain areas specifically and maybe even do some drop-ins from time to time.
Did I tell you that we actually had someone reach out who said, because we mentioned we might take the show on the road. He said, hey, if you come to LA and if you do a talk in LA, I'll save an extra 1%. I love it.
He's bribing us by making himself more successful. Maybe that means he's going to take it to the next level of the relationship that much sooner. But guys, thanks so much for tuning in on this special Mondays episode. Go check us out, moneyguy.com. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Thank you for putting up with the grovelly Stevie Nicks voice. I'll have it all back to normal soon.